This episode of the Bloody Vegans podcast is brought to you by Veg1 and the good folks over at the Vegan Society. Veg1 is the multivitamin and mineral supplement designed by vegans for vegans. It was introduced back in 2005, updated in 2021 with an incredible new plastic-free package, and contains all of those key vitamins and minerals that everyone will tell you when you transition into a plant-based diet, into a vegan lifestyle, that you need to think about, and you absolutely do. So what's in there? You've got B2, B6, B12, D3, iodine, selenium, and folic acid. So all of those kind of key ones you need to consider when you're starting out, or perhaps you've been here for some time. And it's all in a convenient once-a-day chewable form, which is super helpful, right? It's just £12.70 for 6 months worth, and they come in two amazing flavours. You've got orange and you've also got blackcurrant. Orange is a personal favourite of mine. I'm definitely team orange when it comes to Veg1. So if you'd like to know more and you're interested in picking up your 6 month supply, head over to thevegansociety.com, search for Veg1, and you can pick up some right there, delivered straight to your door. Enjoy the episode.
So I became vegan about 10 years ago, and I just woke up one morning. I was vegetarian before that for 4 or 5 years, and then I woke up one morning, like I say morning, it's like 3 a.m. Just thinking about all the things that I had seen on mostly dairy and pig farms, you know, during my vet training, and you know, you do a lot of work experience, all your holidays are work experience. So essentially all the way through that and my first year of vetting, and I just like cried for hours, and then I cried that I wasn't going to have milk in my tea anymore, and that was my main, I think that's what had, you know, stopped me from becoming vegan before, was that I would have to have soy milk in my tea, and I'd only tried it once and I had thought it was revolting. And so anyway, I made the decision then and there that, you know, that was the end of milk in my tea, and I just had to do it for my sanity essentially. And from then on I've had soy milk in my tea, and I'm a soy milk fan, I would say.
And the milks have probably got better over the last 10 years, right?
Yeah, but you know what, that day, I think just from making the decision, you know, I couldn't have dairy milk anymore. And when I had that soy milk on that day, that first day, because I had to, or I don't know, something just changed in me, and it was absolutely fine.
Yeah.
You know? But now, I have to say, I'm a soy milk fan. I'm not an almond milk or cashew milk, just good old soy, thanks.
Nice. What do you think triggered that? I mean, obviously, like, you had all these experiences leading up to it that you said, like, you know, you'd seen various things on farms and so on. But was there anything in the immediate run up to that kind of 3 a.m. wake up that you distinctly remember there was a pivotal kind of moment for you? Or was it just, do you think it was an accumulation of things that were just in your subconscious?
Yeah, I think it was an accumulation. I'd never been allowed, you know, growing up, we'd never had pets, or my mum didn't want anything in the house that ate meat, or just because she didn't want to have to deal with smelly poo, apparently, or had a tail. So we only had hamsters and guinea pigs. And so my whole life had just been, you know, there had been this dream to have a dog. And I think probably having a dog and spending that much time, you know, with your own animal, and going through vet school, they kind of harden you up, you know?
Yeah.
So she kind of softened me again, and I probably allowed myself to think about all the things that I had seen, you know?
Right.
It was like a gradual process.
Is that quite an active thing, that sort of desensitization? Do you feel like it's, looking back at the training, it's quite proactive insofar as that kind of needed to happen in order for you to be able to do the things that you do as a vet?
Well, I think you go into it and nobody says, "Are you okay?" You know, or there wasn't any emotional guidance. You're just expected to see things and learn about things that really, if you thought about them properly, would be terrifying, revolting, you know, stuff of of nightmares, really. But because you go into it and you're trying to be a good vet, and it's just the way that animal agriculture, works. And maybe even as a girl, you're kind of trying to prove that you're not a sissy, you can't start crying on a dairy farm. It's it would be frowned upon, obviously. So yes, you do need to be hardened just to deal with certain situations and not fall apart. But then I think, it almost takes you too far, that you can't see what's right in front of you. You just accept it as the status quo.
Was there any mention of, from your peers at the time, were any of your peers kind of thinking about veganism or animal welfare in outside of, obviously they were trying to help animals as vets, but did you come across any of that kind of a thought process or mindset in your training from like your peers?
So now I graduated 15 years ago. So compared to, I guess, vet students now, where obviously veganism has exploded, it's amazing, and probably people, well, I know from Facebook forums, etc., and just how many vegans there are now, that obviously there are vegan vet students, whereas back 15 years ago, and so it would have been 20 years ago when I started the training, there was only 2 vegans in our whole year, and we regarded them as a little extreme. I couldn't see it from their point of view at all, and to side with them or to it was almost like seen as a weakness or them going overboard. Whereas now, I'm in touch with Tim, he's one of my friends, and I've said to him since, like, oh, I am so sorry, like, I just couldn't see it. How did you put up with all of us for 5 years? How did you, there we were, trying to reassure ourselves that everything we were doing and everything we were seeing and everything we were learning about was all okay, and they could see it right from the beginning.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, obviously, there's being a vet for, companion animals for that people have, alongside them in their homes, and then there's being a vet for animal agriculture and so on. Does your work as a vet generally cross over the two quite regularly, or is it very much like two schools?
Yeah, it's very much two schools. So I think back in the day, when there were a lot more mixed practices and vets would do a bit of both, you'd be treating the farm animals and the farm dog. But now they've become much more specialized. There is so much information that I think it would be, it's very difficult to do farm animal, large animal, horse and farm animal, and then companion animals as well. Then you've got exotic animals obviously as well. So to be good at everything is tricky.
Right.
You really do specialize now.
Do you think, having sort of seen the both, that there's kind of one of the things that is difficult, not just the kind of almost the academic learning of different species and so on, but the being able to switch mindsets? Because I'd imagine, like, when you're speaking to somebody who's bringing in their companion animal who's been with them for 10, 15 years and is part of the family and so on and so forth, versus going to see a dairy farmer, I'd imagine the conversation is different, the mindset is different. Did you sort of almost feel yourself ever having to switch tones, and did that kind of sort of cause any reflection on your part, or any of your peers for that matter?
Clients expect you to love the dog. I think we get closer to the patients than we used to, or more emotionally involved in companion animal veterinary. And but yeah, I think from going on a farm, it has been quite a long time since I did that. But you still have that close relationship with the farmer. The farmer still wants that cow to be all right. But yeah, it will be a different relationship for sure.
Yeah. I guess that's the thing. Us in the vegan world now, I suppose you sort of almost think, well, their reasoning for wanting that cow to be all right is less, it's a bit more nefarious, is less compassionate than the person with the companion animal. So I always wonder whether that ever sort of would trigger in the mind of a vet at that moment, whether they're thinking, well, this person's end goal is ultimately profit, and this person's end goal is that their companion stays with them, and whether that sort of jars in the mind of, like, the average vet doing those things. But like you say, I suppose they're quite church and state. They're very different schools of thought probably now, and so you probably get used to either I'm talking to people with companion animals all day, or I'm talking to farmers all day.
Yeah, and I think that in the end, it's the person who is your client, and it's that person that you've got your patient, is obviously a paramount priority, but it's the client who you are trying to keep happy and manage their expectations and their budgets. So I don't know that, I'm not a large animal vet anymore. I don't know, or I don't even know that vets would allow themselves to think about why they're making that animal better, simply to be more productive and then go off for slaughter or live export or whatever it is. Because I think if you thought about it, really, it would be too upsetting.
Yeah.
The reality of it, why we are large animal vets, why we're going out to treat those animals.
Yeah. Do you think there's any... So I don't expect you to know all the exact statistics, but I'm kind of interested whether, because it's like 1% of the population are vegan right now, and that's obviously, it's growing, but growing relatively slowly. But it's although it feels quick, but it's the flexitarian bit is probably bigger, but the actual vegan bit is still apparently 1%. Would you say that holds true, the same statistic for vets, or would you say it's sort of there's more or less from your experience?
So I would say vet nurses would be a high proportion of vegans. Yeah. But I guess like everybody you meet, so many of my friends now are thinking about veganism. Like, it's amazing. And so I do know a lot of vets now who are coming round to the idea for various reasons. But I definitely don't think that that I would have ever said that there's a high proportion of vegans in the veterinary world. Not at all. But the vet nurse world, yeah.
Yeah. When did the idea for Noochy Poochy come out of you being a vet?
Well, I was working in Brighton about 5 years ago, and I had my dog, rescue Doberman, love of my life. And even in Brighton, I was finding it harder and harder to make it to the pet shop till with my bag of lamb and rice or whatever it was. Like, starting to extend that concern that, now 5 years into veganism, it was starting to play on my mind, and, that Kizzy, my dog, would have been quite happy eating anything really, as long as it was delicious. And I would have been more happy if the food was, nutritionally complete, but it didn't have a lamb anywhere near it.
Yeah.
And so I had to order in. So I thought, I looked everywhere, and even in Brighton, there was no vegetarian or vegan pet food on the shelf. You had to do a special order.
Right.
So I ordered, and it took 2 weeks to come. And then when it did arrive, great, Kizzy ate it. But I looked on the back of the pack, and I just wasn't thrilled, you know,
Right.
with the ingredients and the nutrients essentially. I just didn't feel that it was brilliant. So, and it was then that I thought, well, I'm sure that there are people like me, vegans probably, who would feed their dog quite happily a vegan dog food if there was one out there where I was happy with what was on the back of the pack. You know, it really was exceptional. I could be sure that it was nutritionally complete, it was comprehensive, that she was getting everything that she needed, and that it was kind and sustainable too. And that was the beginning of that. And lo and behold, here we are 5 years later. It's taken a lot of work because in order to make a vegan dog food that meets FEDIAF requirements, so FEDIAF is the trade body of the European pet food industry, and so they set out certain nutritional guidelines which you should meet in order to claim nutritionally complete.
Right.
And so that would be based on the most up-to-date understanding of dog nutrition, what they need to thrive, essentially. So what I wanted to do was make the best vegan dog food, better than anything that had been before, that also, you know, that complied with FEDIAF guidelines as a minimum, and then that also met what I was expecting to see and that what I wanted in my dog's food. And so, and that turned out to be quite a lot of work.
What was that process like? Was it easy to find substitutes that were nutritionally complete, that were, you know, appealing to dogs? How was that process?
So the ingredients in Noochy Poochy, for instance, will be ingredients that you recognise on the back of the pack of foods that you buy for yourself, or, you know, in your protein shake. So it was more the fact that what I wanted, that I was quite regimented with what I wanted. So I wanted a protein level of 28%. I managed to meet a wonderful nutritionist, John. He's been a nutritionist for over 35 years and has a knack and an enthusiasm for novel, exciting recipes and a challenge, thank God. And he has the patience of a saint. So he has been wonderful. And together we've been able to make a dog food that is compliant with FEDIAF guidelines, has an omega-6-3 ratio of 4:1, and 30% organic ingredient content.
Wow, that's pretty incredible stuff. Finding all of that, that's, you know, appealing to dogs too. What was the process of trialing it with various dogs?
So we didn't want to do. So you can send away palatability testing. So you actually send your dog food to kennels where dogs are kept specifically for palatability trials. So obviously that wasn't going to work for us at all. So what we did was send to some rescue centres, and they were very kind and offered their long-term residents who weren't on any, you know, didn't have any specific nutritional or medical, you know, conditions. They did a palatability trial. They did it a couple of times actually. We started cold pressed, then we went to extruded, and then I got in touch with a few vegan vets on a Facebook forum and said, hello, can I send you out some of our product, and, you know, will you try it out with your dogs? So everyone's been really great, and so we got back feedback from in a nice way. So from the humans feeding it to their dogs in their houses, you know, and not having to do anything that with kennel dogs kept specifically for palatability trials. It's just so sad.
I didn't even know that was a thing that happened.
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's crazy. What's the what was the feedback like? Did you have to tweak quite a bit? Were dogs pretty keen to try vegan dog food from what your experience was?
So it went down really well when we did the cold press trial at the beginning. We actually didn't go cold press in the end because it was coming out, not because the dogs were having any issues with it or that it seemed to impact the palatability at all. It was that the owners were not liking the way that it looked. It just looked like cat litter essentially.
Oh, right.
So, and obviously as an owner, you obviously care about what's in it, but you don't want to be feeding something that looks completely unattractive or that you wouldn't want to, doesn't look nice in any way.
Yeah.
So we moved away from that. I didn't feel like jumping on the market with that as our first product would do us any favors essentially. And so we went with extruded, which has a much nicer like kibble appearance.
This episode of the Bloody Vegans podcast is brought to you by Veg One from the Vegan Society. Veg One is the nutritional vitamin and mineral supplement designed for vegans by vegans. Launched back in 2005 and rebranded in 2021 with a fantastic new plastic-free package, Veg One provides nutritional support alongside a healthy and balanced vegan diet, all for an affordable price. With a 6-month supply available for just £12.70, Veg One will cost you little over £2 a month and offers EU nutrient reference values, or NRVs, of vitamin B12, D3, iodine, selenium, B2, B6 and folic acid. Veg One is chewable, it's affordable and reliable, you can take it once a day, it's available in fantastic orange and blackcurrant flavours, super easy and convenient, completely plastic free. So why not head over to vegansociety.com, search for Veg One and take your next healthy steps into the world of veganism.
Has there been much skepticism from folks? Have folks have you either read, seen, had any feedback from people who are kind of like, well, you can't do this. There's no way you can make a nutritionally complete dog food that's vegan, that kind of thing. I know, like, as a parent of a small child who's 3.5, I get a lot of folks who have an opinion about vegan nutrition for children, whether they're nutritionally qualified or not. Usually they're not, but they have an opinion on it nonetheless. Is it pretty much the same when it comes to dog nutrition?
Yeah. So there was a study in 2019, and they surveyed 3,500 people, and quite a few interesting things came out of this study. So it was a pet owner study, survey, sorry, should I say? And so it turned out that vegans and vegetarians were much more likely to be pet owners than the normal general population, that was interesting itself. So if you share, your people who don't eat animals are more likely to be sharing their homes with them, and that 78% of vegans who were surveyed said that who didn't feed a plant-based diet said that they would do if they were sure that it met their standards. So that was either that they wanted more information about nutritional adequacy, or if they were happy with the cost. But one of the main reasons, or 45% of those, was that they wanted more information on the nutritional adequacy. Okay. So there is a huge worry, and concern that even amongst vegans, and obviously we have such a high regard for animals. Why would we wouldn't want to, feed an animal that we have such high regard for, an animal, a diet that is not good for them, just because it's kinder to the farm animals. We want something that's good all round. So there is a worry that plant-based diets are not nutritionally, or can't be nutritionally complete, when they absolutely can. And we have them on the market now. So in order for us to bring Noochy Poochy Adult, which is our first product, to market, we had our first technical challenge, which was that there is at the moment no vegan vitamin D3, and you need to have D3 in a nutritionally complete food for you to call it a complete food. So there was no vegan vitamin D3 on the market approved for use. They used to allow vitamin D2, which was a vegan source of vitamin D, but that was taken off the market in 2018. So plant-based dog foods were in this absolute nightmare, really, of all of their ingredients being plant-based, completely vegan, but they were kind of bound by the legislation to use the non-vegan D3. So we had to we took a vegan vitamin D3 from the human market. They've been on the human market for quite some time. And we put it through stability testing in our product, for quite a few months to prove, or we were able to prove, thankfully, it actually did better than we even thought that it would, that it was completely stable in the dog food. And so, so being a vet, due diligence is absolutely of paramount importance. We want to make sure that when we're giving this food to our dogs, that it is nutritionally complete, that it complies with all the requirements, and that they're going to do well on the food. So I guess when we're trying to put in a lot of effort, and prove that it can be just as good, if not better, than conventional dog food. We just released the first ever nutritionally complete vegan puppy food that complies with FEDIAF and AFCO guidelines. So, and again, that took a lot of work. We wanted to do it 8 months ago. It's taken 7 months of searching for EPA and DHA, which are requirements of a nutritionally complete puppy food. So they're a special type of omega-3. So obviously the interest in omega-3 for the last few years, while us humans have, realised how, important it is and the benefits of it. And the main source of omega-3 for the world at the moment is fish. So it's caused an upsurge in fishing and of already dwindling fish stocks. So we were in, again, another little bit of a conundrum. Where are we going to get EPA and DHA? So where do fish get their EPA and DHA? They get it from the marine algae. So we went straight to the source. So we've bypassed the fish, left them in the sea, and we have now got EPA and DHA from marine algae in our new puppy food. So it's completely compliant. Obviously, we've got the vegan vitamin D3 that we've already proved is stable time and time again through months of testing. That's product testing, obviously not animal testing. And so a lot of work has gone into to be as certain as we can that the food is living up to the standards that we would expect, that I would want to feed my dogs. Really, I am here and Noochy Poochy is here to prove that you can have nutritionally complete, comprehensive dog food and bring it to the market in a kind and sustainable way.
It's an incredible amount of diligence, and I think you no doubt are going to end up with that amount of work put in with a product that is equal to, if not better. I think it's an amazing amount of time and energy put into it. It's incredible. Thinking about things like the algal oil and obviously the D3, and that when you say that, I'm wondering whether the cost that adds to the production, like, was that a big challenge for you in terms of finding those sources that were kind of nutritionally sound, but also fit into the kind of price points that people were prepared to pay and expected from obviously a high quality dog food? But was that a bit of an obstacle for you?
Well, so we are a self-funded startup at the moment, and it has been a challenge, let's say, I was working as a vet full time until 6 weeks ago, just because of all the development costs and all the consultancy, industry experts and quite a few trials, lots of ups and downs, and then of course Brexit and COVID. So we have a price point now. So it's our adult food is 2 kilograms is $15.99. So that's on par with your Canagan, so it's kind of like your premium meat-based dog foods. And we knew we couldn't really go above that. I felt that was the top. And so we had to tweak things in order to stay, at that level. I would have gone fully organic if I could, but we had to keep to 30%. That allowed us to keep within that price point. And I hope that as we sell more, we'll be able to drop the price, of course. But we've also got like fully recyclable packaging, and all these things are expensive. But I know as a millennial myself, having spent the last 15 years digging deeper into my pocket to support businesses to whose ethics resonate or who I feel are doing better, that you hope or expect that the market, that our customers will do the same to support us, when they see all the effort and research. And it's so important to us to do it completely right, and with due diligence. Absolutely, so important.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the care and attention that's gone into that thought process. And I would imagine, I don't know, you perhaps be able to correct me, I would imagine that the sort of the mainstream dog food market obviously is everything's done at scale, for one. So there's obviously, they've got the advantage of that from a price point of view. But I wonder whether there's as much time, care and attention that's gone into some of those things. I don't know if that's probably putting you on the spot to ask you to talk about that, but I would wonder as a consumer whether there was the same. And I'd probably, obviously as a vegan, I'm biased, but I would I'd err on the side of a product like Noochy Poochy.
Oh, well, thanks very much. Well, I think, but because we've got something to prove, we want to make sure that we're kind of bulletproof, because we're going out there, we're trying to take on the conventional pet food market. We have to do everything to make sure that the product is as good as we can get it, within that price point, obviously. But as I said, I'd love it if we could go 100% organic, but we just can't. Nobody would be able to afford it. When we take into account all the other parameters within the product itself, the proteins that we're using and the supplemented amino acids. And then we're using, for instance, we use olive oil, not olive pomace, so we're using the best ingredients that we can, so that when you read the back of the pack, that you or I am happy that we're feeding that to our dogs and expecting them then, there's a reasonable expectation then that they will enjoy it and that they'll thrive.
Yeah. Is there I'd imagine there is, but with kind of when we talk about veganism in the human food chain, we talk a lot about climate change and we talk a lot about environmental impact. Is that something that sort of has also been an added benefit as factored into your decision making around Noochy Poochy?
So I guess my reasons for going vegan were always the animal welfare aspect. But yes, we're making a product that is more sustainable. A lot of the meat-based products on the conventional pet food market are from the offcuts of meat from the abattoir, so the bits that are deemed, not the humans don't want or are not suitable for whatever reason. But so that's good. I mean, it's in a way, it's obviously we're not wasting. Where it is wasteful is where, as humanization happens, we love our animals more. More people are wanting prime cuts of meat, not the abattoir offcuts. And so you're actually effectively killing more animals just to feed our growing number of of dogs. But even within that, the waste element, so there's two-pronged. So one is that that waste meat or the offcuts, in order to get put into dry dog food, for instance, that meat has to get taken to a rendering plant and it has to be processed before it can go into the dry dog food. Now what happens is it goes to the rendering plant and it is split into meat and bone meal and fat. And then the dog food companies will buy the MBM and the fat at differing proportions, and obviously it's more expensive to buy just like single species MBM, so chicken or beef, where you can then put on the back of the pack chicken or beef. You don't declare it MBM. Excuse me. And then you buy the fat as well, and you put that in at whatever proportion that the recipe calls for. So, but what hasn't ever really been spoken about before, as far as I know, is, but I think that it's a reasonable question, is if we are processing that meat to the point where it's split into meat and bone meal and fat, and this is a legal requirement because it's to reduce the risk of ever getting something like BSE or another transmissible spongiform encephalopathy. So it's to reduce that risk ever happening again in the UK. I mean, obviously that's good, but the problem is that rendering process is killing denaturing the prion proteins that are responsible for spongiform encephalopathies like BSE. So if we are denaturing them, then can we reasonably expect that the meat protein that we are expecting to nourish our dogs, can we reasonably expect that to be okay? And where now we're realizing that processed meats are, predisposed to cancer, then I think it is very much a reasonable question to ask, can these proteins that we're putting through all that process, these meat proteins that we're processing that much, are they really good for our dogs?
That is certainly a reasonable question. Yeah, and it really makes you think, that one, because I would imagine, I don't know, but I'd imagine you're allowed to sort of almost, you're stating what kind of went in pre-processing almost. I'd imagine there's no process afterwards where the nutritional value of something is measured after it's.
So I think what you mean is the quality. Yeah. So there is nothing
is that quality measured afterwards or before?
Yeah. So it's just, and John, our nutritionist, makes this great analogy. So, which is leather. If you gave your dog a leather boot, right? It's protein.
Yeah.
But would you expect a leather boot to be nutritious? That protein has been changed so much, but it's protein. And exactly the same is happening to the protein that goes into dog food, is that it's being processed, that there's no way, and there is no need for pet food at the moment to show the quality or how much is available to the dogs when it is eaten. So at the moment it's so vague what is on the back of the pack, and I'm sure that will change in the next few years. But right now it's you glean as much information as you can, but essentially you know nothing about how those ingredients were processed before they went into the bag.
It's fascinating when I sort of think about that and that process of sort of the standard dog food, and then think about some of the marketing around some of those products, and the this image of like the butcher's dog and all this kind of stuff, like it's sort of I guess we've seen it in human food for decades, so why would it be any different in that industry as well? It's it's fascinating. In fact, I've never thought about it in those terms, but fascinating when you talk about that processing.
But it's so scary. Like,
Yeah.
I hadn't known as a vet, I hadn't known that that's what it was. So for instance, when you see animal and meat derivatives on the back of the pack, that is mixed species MBM. That's really what it is. And when it's chicken MBM. It's and I didn't even realize until I started developing Noochy Poochy, and was able to get more information. But I completely didn't know what to then.
It's kind of shocking, really, to be honest. I'd imagine this whole process has been a bit of an enlightening one for you.
Exactly. Yeah, it definitely has. Yeah, and it just makes you even more, more happy, more thrilled when I'm feeding my dogs Noochy Poochy. I feel so much better than how I had felt. I didn't even know that I felt that, but probably with all the extra information that I have now, the extra knowledge, but I feel so happy feeding them Noochy Poochy, because I am happy with, what they're getting, finally.
I guess there's a confidence that goes beyond just the I'm pleased it's vegan to actually not only is it vegan and that's good for so many reasons that we already know about, but I know I trust it's good for my dog too, which that's what anybody who has a companion dog in their life ultimately wants. So why not?
Well, but I think a lot of people do worry now that and again vegans as well included, that it's not natural, they're not set up for eating plant-based, and
right.
This is where, again, I had to do some reading up and make sure that I was happy with going down this route of plant-based dogs' diets. Essentially, they have been domesticated, or the domestication process, as they call it. It's not domesticated dog, it's actually this domestication process that happens between humans and dogs, and is still ongoing to this day, started at least 14,000 years ago. So that's when there's a grave where a couple are buried with the remains of their dogs, and so that's taken as the earliest absolute evidence that dogs were domesticated and revered and loved and part of the family. So about 6,000 years ago is when we started modern day farming as such, and so they were with us throughout that whole time period, following our farming around essentially. And most of the time the majority would have been cereals, grains and vegetables. So they have been exposed, or they have been eating those for 6,000 years, and more likely, I'm sure, to have got plant-based scraps from us than meat-based scraps, as meat probably would have been more precious. So, and there's scientific papers to back all of this up. They have evolved over the last 6,000 years. So their pancreas has started to produce more amylase. So they have more amylase glands, 28 times actually, more amylase glands than the wolf, which is genetically different from dogs. But and their small intestine has changed so that it's basically there's a faster glucose uptake system. But what these two things prove is that they have evolved to deal with, and to make efficient use of plant-based, grain-based food. And so they are set up to take nutrients from plant-based. And if we can, with what I've said about the process that meat goes through in order to get into the bag, then surely if we're giving them everything that they need, as far as we know, up-to-date nutritional information and requirements, they love it. It's delicious. You know, that we're not making them miserable, and
Yeah.
and it's kind and sustainable, then surely it's win-win all round.
Absolutely. And again, a real reassurance, I think, for people to hear, because I'd imagine like even many sort of committed vegans would say, you know, am I 100% doing the right thing for my dog? So it's great to know that they are, and there's actually, you know, scientific backing to say that. How have people responded? You know, since it's been out on the market, what about, you know, people who have dogs in their lives? How have you heard much feedback from them directly, from the consumers?
So, well, we've been really thrilled. Feedback's been great, and we've had quite a lot of fussy dogs, or dogs that would normally not eat any dry kibble are loving Noochy Poochy. I don't know why. I mean, obviously Nooch is for nutritional yeast, because it gives it a cheesy flavour. So we were banking on that, you know, being a winner. But I think that the cheese, the nutritional yeast, and the mixed herbs is giving this what some owners are tasting and describing themselves as like a spaghetti bolognese kind of taste. And
Nice.
Yeah, so most dogs seem to agree that it's delicious, even the fuss pots. So that's been really great for us, and obviously quite relieving as well. I mean, obviously we did palatability in-house trials, etc., but until you actually release to the market, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. But yeah, we've been very pleased and happy.
That's awesome. Great news. Where can folks go to find Noochy Poochy? Because I'd imagine there's some people listening to this who are pretty eager to get their hands on some.
So we sell online on our website, noochypoochy.com, and you can buy us on the vegankind.com as well. And we are, I'm happy to say, in quite a few refill stores, so you can go and fill up your own containers. And even happier to say that we're now in pet shops in Brighton.
Amazing. Well, there's, as you can imagine, there's a little listening base in Brighton, so I'm sure they'll be pleased to hear that. Lucy, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I'm going to make sure we get the links to everything in the show notes so that folks can go and can explore Noochy Poochy's website for themselves and perfect. So on. So, but I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much.